सच्चिदानंद सद्गुरु साईनाथ महाराज की जय. So in the previous session we started with the family life of Saint Eknath. Now this is going to be the continuation of that. So let us see some virtues of Saint Eknath in this. So Eknath is famous for his virtues such as peace, pity, compassion, forgiveness, tolerance, and wider point of view. He endured insults and injustice made to him. He had no consideration whether somebody is rich or of high caste. He had no difference in his mind. His peace of mind was never disturbed. There is a story about his virtue of tolerance. One day he was returning home after taking bath in Godavari river. An arrogant Mohammedan officer sitting in a window on the upper floor of his house spat on him from above. Eknath quietly went and took bath again. When he returned, that person spat again. Eknath took bath again. This happened again and again. At last, the Mohammedan person repented for his action and came down, fell at Eknath's feet, and begged for forgiveness. This showed his tolerance, you know. And then next comes his virtue of never getting angry with anybody. So Eknath never got angry. Some mischievous persons used to irritate him so that he would get angry. One day a Brahmin entered his house with his shoes on and entered the shrine room and sat on his lap when he was worshipping. Eknath, instead of getting angry, put his hand on the back of the Brahmin affectionately and said kindly, "No, please take dinner and then only go home." After some time, the dinner was served. The wife of Eknath, Girija, was serving food. That Brahmin, in order to tease Eknath, climbed on the back of Girija. He thought that Eknath would be angry, but Eknath was not disturbed. He said to his wife, "Please take care, the Brahmin may fall down." The wife said, "Do not worry. I have had practice of working while our son Hari was carried on by me on my back. This son is a bit bigger, that's all." Eknath did not think this enough. He gave 200 rupees to that Brahmin, which amount was needed for the thread ceremony of his son. It is not necessary that the Brahmin repented. And then another incident where one day there was dinner prepared in the memory of the dead father of Eknath. The food was ready. At that time, some men belonging to untouchable caste came at the door and smelling the fragrance of the cooked food, they desired to have that food. Eknath did not mind. He thought that though those people will take food, his dead parents would be satisfied. What did he do? He called them inside and sent a man to their locality to call more people. Many came, enough food was prepared. All took the rich food and, being satisfied, went back after saluting humbly to this generous man. Eknath cleaned his house properly and prepared food again for offering to ancestors, which was to be given to the Brahmins who were to come for dinner. But the Brahmins declined to enter the house where low caste people had been entertained. To take dinner, there was a far cry. Eknath requested them, but the Brahmins denied and challenged him. If Atman, that is the soul, is one in all the beings, why not call personally your father and other ancestors? Eknath said, "All right, you can. See for yourself." Brahmins came in and they saw that not only the ancestors of Eknath, but also the ancestors of those Brahmins were happily dining. They were visible to all. The Brahmins were nonplussed and held the feet of Eknath. They quietly sat for the dinner and went home satisfied. A low caste man by name Ranya had called Eknath for dinner to his house. He had great respect for Eknath. His wife and himself were devotees of god Panduranga. Ranya was a regular pilgrim of Pandharpur. Eknath agreed, but Brahmins in the town made a great issue out of this because in those days it was very unlawful and anti religious for a Brahmin to take food at the house of such people. Brahmins came to his home. They found him present there and they already knew that Eknath was also dining at the house of Ranya. The Brahmins were ashamed. The fact was that Lord Shri Krishna had appeared to the Brahmins as Eknath. Once Eknath was going to the bank of river Godavari for performing the Sandhya ritual of the midday. It was summer and the weather was very hot. The soles of the feet were being scorched. On the way, he saw a low caste woman walking speedily and her little child hurriedly following her. The child suddenly fell and began to cry. Eknath was moved up by pity. He lifted that boy, wiped his mouth, his face, and eyes by cloth, and holding him on his arm, covering his head by his shoulder cloth, went ahead and handed the boy to his mother. Eknath was thus very sympathetic. This compassion was not limited to human beings only. There is another story about his kindness. His son was carrying the water of Ganga river from Varanasi, which was to be carried to Rameshwar temple and offered to Lord Shiva there. But when Eknath saw a donkey lying in the hot sun, panting and suffering from thirst, he poured that sacred water in the open mouth of the donkey. Eknath, accompanied by many people, had gone ahead to meet his son Haripant to welcome him, and this act of compassion was done by him there. All the people were annoyed. They thought that a lot of spiritual merit would have been earned if that water had been taken up to Rameshwar. They argued with Eknath, but he pacified them and explained to them that to have pity towards such beings is the highest religious act. Thus, the travel of that sacred water ended at Paitan, which was no less a sacred place than Rameshwar. Blessings from Krishnadas Mugdal. Krishnadas Mudgal, a scholar, had begun writing Ramayana. Most of the story was already written. One astrologer prophesies that he would die an untimely death and his work would remain incomplete. He rushed to see Eknath and told him about it. Eknath read some portion of his Ramayana, which he liked. He said to Krishnadas, "How much time do you think you will take to finish writing? Reside at my home, start writing further." This is what Saint Eknath said to him. That scholar lived with Eknath. He finished the book writing in 11 days. He died much later. The astrologer was proved wrong. Thus, had postponed the death of that scholar. Hari Pandit and dinner for 1000 Brahmins. This is the next story. Hari Pandit is the son of Saint Eknath. Hope you all remember. Eknath did not observe untouchability. He used to explain Vedanta in Marathi. Getting angry about this, his son left home and went to Varanasi, as we have already read. Eknath, the kind hearted father, felt forlorn at this parting. He went to Varanasi to bring him back. He came to Paitan but put a condition that Eknath should not explain Vedanta or mythological books in Marathi. Eknath stopped all his programs. Hari Pandit began instead, but the listeners were not coming to hear. An old lady who used to come to listen to the discourses of Eknath came and told Eknath, "Respected one, I was once rich, but now I have become poor. Earlier I had intended to give dinner to 1000 Brahmins, but now it is not possible. Now my wish is only to invite you alone to my house for dinner. Will you kindly oblige me?" This is what the old lady asked Saint Eknath. Hari Pandit regarded the wish of the lady with due respect. He was also ready to go, but he desired to cook the food himself at the lady's house. Eknath and the old lady agreed. All went to her home. Hari Pandit cooked the food personally. Eknath sat at the dinner. What that lady did was that she herself put one laddu in the plate of Eknath. After dinner, Eknath told his son to lift and remove the empty leafy dishes of both. He did so. Under the dish used by Eknath, he found dish below dish, which were 1000. The old lady got the merit of giving dinner to 1000 Brahmins by giving food only to Eknath. At this miracle, Hari Pandit was ashamed and bowed to the feet of his father. Eknath told him to follow the path of devotion. The dislike about Marathi and the sense of untouchability, which were his prejudices, were gone. Next, about Bhavartha Ramayana. There is a belief that the river Godavari used to visit in person to listen to discourses of Eknath. Even now, a seat is reserved for the river Godavari when Purana discourses are arranged. Eknath was composing Ramayana in OV form, and he was also reading aloud and explaining it to listeners in the temple. He was of advanced age by now. A woman had sent her dull son by name Gaoba to the house of Eknath, where she promised he would get Puran Poli. Eknath told him, "You will of course receive what you want, but you must listen daily to Ramayana." Goaba began to listen to Ramayana daily. The poetry was completed by Eknath up to the 44th chapter of Yuddha Khand. Eknath one day declared to the listeners, "I am now going to leave you." The call of the god is received. The listeners felt very sorry. They asked, "Who will complete the poetry?" "On Ramayana," Eknath said. "Gaoba will complete this Ramayana." He called Gaoba near and put his own hand on his head as a blessing. Gaoba prostrated before Eknath and from that day began to speak Ovis for the listeners. They felt that Eknath himself is talking through the voice of Gaoba. The remaining epic poetry was completed by Gaoba. Next comes the departure of Eknath. On the 5th day of the second fortnight of Phalgun, Eknath found himself very indisposed. He fainted. People thought in their mind whether Eknath will die like any other ordinary men. Eknath understood this thought without being asked. He said to his servant Uddhava, "Tomorrow is the 6th day. I am going to die by entering the waters of Godavari river by way of trance." Thus all knew now why that day was very significant, as told earlier by Eknath. On the second day, that is the 6th day of the second fortnight of Phalgun, Shaka 1521, a procession called Dindi started, and all people in that procession reached the river Godavari. Eknath did the last performance of Kirtan in his life on the sands of Godavari. People asked him, "When will you come again?" At that time, Eknath spoke to them in poetic form of Abhanga. He told them in that Abhanga, "When the path of religion is not followed, when all religiousness increases, then we come down in this world where there are many heretics with their selfish deeds abound in the world. We would destroy their face with the weapon of worship of Hari." That Abhanga contained some messages. Eknath entered in the stream of the river and left his body on the place called Krishna Kamala to the mercy of speedy flow of waters. After, when his mortal body came to the surface of water, Hari Pandit, his son, performed the last rites by funeral fire. A structure, that is a samadhi, was created there in memory of Eknath. Among the 5 great saints of Maharashtra, Eknath is reckoned with great respect. It was he who prepared a correct manuscript of Dhyaneshwari. In addition to Bhagavata, Eknath has written many other books in Marathi OV form. His Barud style is very popular among dramatists of folklore. His Bhavartha Ramayana, Rukmini Swayamvara, and Bharud and Abhangas are very popular even in this 22nd century. Om Shri Sachidananda Sadguru Sainath Maharaj Ki Jai.